The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, founded in 1949, now consists of 30 member countries from the North Atlantic. Here are some of the key events from NATO's history.
On April 4th, 1949, the North Atlantic Treaty was signed by Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, France, Italy, Portugal, the United Kingdom, Iceland, Canada, and the United States. This union of 12 nations became known as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or more simply, NATO. They were sworn to stand together against aggression. An attack against one would be an attack against all.
In 1989, with the Cold War still going on, but right at the end, a major event was the fall of the Berlin Wall. This is ultimately going to lead into 1991, when NATO develops partnerships with former enemies or adversaries after the breakup of the Soviet Union.
When I took office as Secretary General of the North Atlantic Alliance, I could not even receive the ambassador of any of the countries of Central and Eastern Europe in our headquarters. Our states were adversaries, even if our peoples did not have this feeling of animosity. 3.5 years later, here we are, sitting around the same table, celebrating the inaugural meeting of the North Atlantic Cooperation Council. If ever history witnessed a profound turnaround, this is such a unique moment. A moment not only of high symbolic, but also of eminent practical value. Europe will not be the same after our meeting today.
So here we have European countries that are now in partnership with one another rather than are in an adversarial relationship with one another where they're in conflict. So we see this greater international cooperation occurring. In 1995, we have NATO engaging in its first major crisis management operation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, following a war that started in the early 1990s.
4 days ago, following adoption of UN Security Council Resolution 1031, NATO initiated Operation Joint Endeavour to establish a NATO-led implementation force for the Bosnian peace agreement. Today at 11 o'clock, Admiral Leighton Smith, as commander of IFOR, assumed control of military operations in Bosnia-Herzegovina. This is a momentous event. With transfer of authority, the IFOR now consists of 17,000 NATO troops in Bosnia. This represents a quarter of the planned force. The presence of NATO in Sarajevo demonstrates the commitment of the alliance to play its part in implementing the peace agreement last week signed in Paris.
We see then in 2001 a very dramatic historic event with the large-scale terrorist attacks in New York and Washington, D.C. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization invoked for the first time ever Article 5 and adopted a broader approach to security.
The NATO nations unanimously condemn these barbaric acts committed against a NATO member state. The mindless slaughter of so many innocent civilians is an unacceptable act of violence without precedent in the modern era. It underscores the urgency of intensifying the battle against terrorism, a battle that the NATO countries, indeed all civilized nations, must win. All allies stand united in their determination to combat this scourge. At this critical moment, the United States can rely on its 18 allies in North America and Europe for both assistance and for support.
And following the terrorist attacks, we have the United States getting involved in wars in both Afghanistan and in Iraq. And you have NATO taking command in 2003 of the International Security Assistance Force in Afghanistan. We see these military allies aligning with the United States, one of the other member states. And then finally, in 2010, we ultimately see the North Atlantic Treaty Organization adopting a new strategic defense concept, the active engagement modern defense.
This strategic concept will ensure that NATO remains as effective as ever in defending our peace, our security, and our prosperity.
Of course, the commitment by the Allies to defend one another against attack remains. But the document opens the way for NATO members to develop new defences against new threats, such as missile proliferation or cyber attacks.
NATO will enhance its role in counterinsurgency operations and in stabilization and reconstruction missions. We will develop a standing capability to train local security forces, and we will create, for the first time, an appropriate but modest civilian capability within NATO to better interface with our international partners. These are all lessons from our operation in Afghanistan. The strategic concept shows we have learned them.
And with that, we've traveled through NATO's history and some of their key events.